right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Brandon White, who is literally up the coast in Northern California in Half Moon Bay. How are you doing, Brandon?
Hey, I'm doing good, John. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And Half Moon Bay is home to Mavericks, if I'm correct, right?
It's right in front of our house. Not directly in front of our house, but out in front, you can see Mavericks right to the right. Yeah, when it's happening, that's a big wave.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Mavericks is a big surf wave. It's one that it's basically not for amateurs, that's for sure.
No, it's and it doesn't happen all the time. It happens on storms in the winter, and it's but when it happens, I mean that wave is 50 plus, can be 50 plus feet. So it's epic.
It is, absolutely. And Brandon's the CEO of Third Brain, a company that embeds digital operations teams into business to implement AI and automation, enhancing efficiency, profitability, background in tech and entrepreneurship. You built and exited multiple businesses, including an early social network. You've been a venture capitalist, angel investor, and a much sought after speaker on AI, entrepreneurship, and emerging technologies, and the author of the book, How to Write a Business Plan in
11 slides. Back of the napkin to business plan in 11 slides.
Excellent. And what we're going to talk about today is just the future of technology and entrepreneurship, because just as mentioned before we came on air, Brandon, I think there's maybe, and tell me if you don't agree or whatever, but I think there's a confluence right now of things where there's a lot more people who want to start their own businesses or become entrepreneurs or go out on their own. Before, they may have perceived that there was a lot of obstacles to that, but it seems like those obstacles are becoming less and less with the advent of remote working. So being able to work wherever you want, with the advent of technology tools and communication tools and things like Upwork, where you can hire like variable resources across the world. So a lot of the things that used to go into starting a business are a lot simpler on the surface than before, and technology is having a big impact. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, so it might age me a little bit, but I started and I was in my early 20s, but I started what became the largest social networking and e-commerce site for sport fishermen of all things on the internet. And I started that in 1996. And I feel like, the difference between when you started a company back then and you had to have your own servers and you had to have DevOps. I mean, there were so many things, John, that you needed to have. In today's world, we can spin up an AWS or a Microsoft or a Google Cloud instance. We can spin up on, I don't know the name on Microsoft or Google, but on AWS, you could stand up a database instance and an RDS instance. And now all of a sudden, like, you're in business, you can scale. I mean, I think Snap or one of the big sites runs on Google Cloud. Like, you can literally spin these things up really quickly. And the world is just, I feel like this is, like you said, a confluence. This is really like a whole new generation of the ability to build software, to scale businesses, to reach people on the internet, just because there's so many more people on the internet. Now that causes some problems because you cut through all this noise from influencers and things, but there's a real chance that you can bootstrap these things and do things virally that will grow your business.
Yeah, it is such a change now, from before, as you said, with the days of having server rooms and hiring sysadmins and then networking people and all of that. You don't have to do that anymore. But I guess to the other point, though, while the tools, it may be easier, you can spin up on AWS and all of that, it may be easier. There's more competition and there is more noise out there. So I guess there's two sides to that equation.
Yeah, the noise, I think, is what is the challenge, because when you have some things that aren't good, people start to make generalizations about it. And then that leads to you when you're not even in that same bucket, but it's hard for you to separate yourself or articulate how you're different. So, good and bad, but the opportunity, I think, is that you can legitimately build a several $100 million business, if not a $1 billion business, with less than 10 people. I will say that probably in a few years, the way that technology is going, you probably be able to do it in less than 5, which might be a little aggressive.
Right.
But if you had your distribution model built into your product or service, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Mhm.
But if you were able to do that, which would cut down on your customer acquisition costs, then all of a sudden you actually can pull that off.
Yeah, because I mean, let's face it. Traditionally, most companies just scale by people. It was always scaling by people, and what happens when you go, oh, I need somebody to do this task. You hire that person, then you realize that that's only half a job. So then you just find other stuff for them to do, and before you know it, you bloated your organization with people who are kind of doing half jobs and made up bits of jobs, and then you got to put in a middle management layer. So those things, I think, as you said, are going away if you're smart enough about it, and you just assemble a group of smart people who are experts in specific things. You can do a lot more with the less people.
And you're going to be able to automate
Yeah,
things. I mean, you are going to, I hesitate to say replace people, but I am seeing that. I'm seeing positions that can be automated in some industries, not everywhere,
sure.
but because AI's limitations and whatnot, and training models and things, or training data to train the model so it can be an expert. But you're going to be able to see that. I mean, you might be able to stand up an agent that's watching your servers for you, and it's giving you the. I mean, in fact, John, that's already here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's going to be a pretty amazing time in the next decade. The interesting part will be, how do people's resources and positions get reshuffled, and where is that opportunity to, if you're an engineer right now, you're still needed. But I mean,
Sure.
it was in the news the other day, Google's doing 25% of their code by AI. That's
Yeah.
sort of crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and just talking about AI, and you just touched on agents there. How big an impact are agents going to have, and I know they're already here, and some people are using them pretty effectively, but not everybody yet. I think people are still stuck in the chatbot world. So maybe explain to our audience like the potential agents have.
Oh, I think agents, as it relates to doing tasks, as contrasted to a chatbot that's giving that has a data repository that's talking like a human, really an advanced search, if you will, right?
Yeah.
But the agents doing things, that's going to literally let you do tasks that people do. I mean, especially now, I think Claude came out and they can read the computer screen. So you start thinking as a really rudimentary thing, well, an agent could go out and fill out forms for you,
Right.
because it can read the internet. So what does that mean? What is the power of that? And if you take that and you just expand it all the way through operations of a business, what can these agents do? I think it's going to have a profound effect. The real key is still going to be, it's not going to be magic. All businesses are different. And the people that are going to have the advantages, I believe, are the people who have the training data to train agents, bots, whatever that mechanism is, to be smart. Because there is some level of nuance. Some business stuff is straightforward, and some accounting things and some things like that. But other things aren't quite as straightforward. So it's going to be that training data, in my mind, at least, that's going to differentiate.
I would agree, and I think also just the data issue is because it's easy to go, oh wow, look, if I could get an agent built for my company and it could use all of our resources and our data, get into our data and all that, it'd be fantastic. Now, how many companies have clean data? And I think that's the issue that's going to face a lot of people.
Well, we look at it at Third Brain in levels. So there's if there's 5 levels and you think about it, to your point, like you could call it a data lake, a data repository, but do you have one location where all your data is in there and actually normalized, whether it's structured or unstructured? I don't really care, but it does need to be in one central place. And that's a whole task unto itself, getting it there from multiple systems. So, and until you have that, you're still working in a siloed system. And I think what we've seen in some cases, and what I've seen, is some people just trying to jump ahead. So you have divisions right now, maybe trying to do their own AI, whether bot or or agent. But like, if there's gonna have to be a broader perspective from a high level to really understand how you're gonna make that company wide.
Yeah. And so therefore, I mean, you have to have your systems communicating and have a single source record, right? Single source of truth, if you like. And all those other systems need to be communicating together. But I guess if you're starting out, you have that advantage then, don't you? Because you can start out with the end in mind, and you can build your systems, integrate your systems, and build your data to in advance for agents.
Well, now that we sort of know the direction, I think you can architect systems, and before you implement the system, understand if if you call them software applications or whatever they are, actually have the ability to export or have direct APIs. Or you're going to have to use Make, or you're going to have to use Zapier in some cases, whatever those things are. And how's that going to work? Versus right now, a lot of companies need to retrofit, and retrofitting is hard.
Yep.
And it's also going to take a long time, because some of these legacy systems in some industries haven't gotten far enough where they even had an API to begin with. So like, how are you going to do all this? So it really requires, what I would suggest, John, is companies need to have an audit.
Yep.
And that they basically need to have their operations mapped, and then their systems mapped, and then figure out what level you are at different divisions, and then how you're going to put it together. It's not a trivial.
No, not at all. And I think the other part too is that I think people would be surprised that there's a lot of big companies and big technologies that people are used to using that are built on very legacy technologies, or even written in their own scripting languages, and things that are going to be very hard. I mean, at some stage, you're going to have to, as you say, retrofit a lot of this stuff, and that's going to be a huge undertaking for some organizations, maybe too much of an undertaking.
Or migrate. I mean, let's just look at CRMs, just as an example. They're not all the same. I mean, there's some modern CRMs out there in the B2B space, but someone like Salesforce, I mean, they have their own programming language, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot of legacy code. If there's a lot of technical debt. They have a lot of cool stuff, but there's also a lot of technical debt in there, and that, in general, they're the big
Sure.
one. So they have a lot of ties and things, but even then we've seen, that's not perfect.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And so, where else do you see AI going in the near to mid future, especially for somebody who's wanting to establish their own business?
Well, I think people who are starting out, the opportunity is now you have these APIs into these LLMs like ChatGPT and Gemini and these other things, that you can build a front end on that and not actually have to hire the data scientist.
Yeah.
Or you might need a data scientist, maybe, but you're not going to need the $1 million data scientist who has built that LLM itself. You can leverage it. So you're getting to a point where you have to find something that solves a problem, right? For sure. Yeah. But then if you can build the technology and you actually have that product market fit, you become a sales and marketing agency. Now, that's a whole thing unto itself. Like, I believe, John, moving forward, you're going to have to figure out how to architect distribution into your product. But the opportunity is that you don't need to hire that deep bench, and you can bootstrap some of this stuff, or do it as a side hustle to start. Some people argue with me like, hey, you shouldn't do side hustles, but all my exits were done as side hustles.
Right.
Yeah. But and you're going to do it with less capital.
Absolutely. And what were you just saying? Sorry, you were just referencing there so there was an issue that you just brought up that I wanted to come back to. It just slipped my mind again.
The issue of not having to hire a data scientist, or
yeah. So there was so basically about making sure that that you don't have to hire a data scientist, but you do. Sorry, you were saying about built-in distribution. That's the thing that I thought that's really interesting.
Well, yeah, and so I think the days are gone where entrepreneurs, if you're listening out there, are just going to say, well, I'm just going to run Facebook ads or Instagram ads or Google ads. Some things will still work, but you need to figure out where there's in my opinion, there's benefit from both sides of actually spreading the application itself, not just, hey, John, this is a cool thing, I wanted to send you a link to it. Like, you don't really benefit from that,
Yeah.
but how does that other person benefit? So I think because costs have gone up on paid ads and app stores are crowded, if
Yeah.
you're just being honest, you're going to have to figure out how distribution is built into your product. Now, that could be someone out there could have an e-commerce business and say, well, Brandon, we're going to leverage TikTok and we're going to get viral videos. Well, viral videos are hard to architect, but if you get up to bat enough, you might catch the wind and get that and put yourself in a position to get lucky. So I just think people need to really think about that, because 15 years ago, we could start a company and we could advertise our way into it.
Yeah.
And now it's not that that's broken. It's that costs have generally gone up in a lot of sectors. And two is, back to something you said earlier, John, in the episode, there's a lot of noise. Yeah. So how many ads have you seen today, if you're listening to this podcast right now, already?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a hugely important point as well. And there's all these different platforms, there's all these different channels and everything, and you can get caught up quite quickly. But like you said, the way people search and look for information, and that's evolving as well. So again, that's going to have an impact on the ads market. And again, like you said, I mean, if you're in a market, say like CRM market that we're in, I mean, the AdWords are horrendously expensive, right? So you could blow through a lot of money very quickly. So you have to get creative, and that's not going to change.
No, it's not going to change. And I built my first company on a two-way dynamic that both people benefited when they found out about it and it was spread, but also on SEO. We had $550,000 worth of free SEO a month if you quantify it, and use something like Ubersuggest or one of these programs out there. And that's how we built that. SEO, as you just pointed out, is changing, but I don't think it's dead. I think that it's not dead, but you are going to have to evolve. So you're going to have to get creative, and you're going to have to figure out how to stand out, and you're going to have to find that competitive edge and hold on to it. And the thing I did want to say, because I don't want anyone listening to this to get discouraged. Like, there's never been better time to start a business with more resources and more people online that you can reach from your kitchen, literally. But you got to be consistent. Like, consistent. If you want to beat the competition, like even in the podcast world, just be consistent. Have some KPIs to measure if you have a good show or people listening, but be consistent, because most people quit.
Yeah, no, they do. And it's interesting you said that. I've talked to a lot of people who started podcasts. We even wrote a white paper recently on our experience spinning up a podcast. But you're right. And I talked to a lot of people, and they say, oh, I did 10 or I did 20 episodes. And yeah, I wasn't really getting anything. I wasn't getting the views and everything. You're going,
that's right.
You're going, yeah, that's like anything else. Have you ever started anything in your life that's just been a success right off the bat?
No, I mean, I know, I don't know how many of your listeners are podcasting, but I'll tell you that the one show that I have in the podcast network, like, we really didn't even find our voice until 150 episodes, like, meaning just found our voice. And if anybody is listening and wants a podcast trick that I've learned, because I've been podcasting actually since 1997, if you can believe it, is you should look at your metric, not unlike YouTube, of what percentage is listened to, and you can get that in your Apple stuff. That's what's going to tell you if you have a good show. And if you only focus on that and you get 80+% listened to of your episode, and you stay consistent, you'll get there. And if they're not listening, then you just have to make your show better. It's just like anything, but I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah. No, I'm about I don't know, 1,600 plus in now, and I'm hoping to find my voice sometime soon.
I think you found you. I think you got your voice, John. You got it.
Yeah. Well, listen, Brandon, this has been fascinating. All of Brandon's information is going to be below this video. But before we go, please do tell people a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so over at Third Brain, we're a automation company where we do an audit of your company and get an assessment of where you are with your technologies and what's possible. We rank you where you are. We help you create an SOP book so that you actually have your operations map, because a lot of companies don't have that, because in the beginning they're just trying to hold it together and then they grow. And some of these companies are even, tens of millions of dollars. And at Third Brain, we help you put that whole picture together so that you can automate where possible and leverage AI and automations in a way that's going to make your business more efficient and fall to the bottom line.
Yeah, and I would have to recommend. I mean, if you're not looking at automation right now, you're missing out on something. Our company couldn't operate the way it does today without all the automations that we have put in place. So I would encourage you to go check out Brandon and and Third Brain. Listen, thanks again, Brandon. Thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon. Thank you.